Welcome, Fright Night Vault listeners. Some gatherings aren't meant for celebration. Some dinners, some toasts are made for ghosts. Tonight's story isn't about loss. It's about what happens when loss refuses to rest. A family gathered to remember a child. A lake reflected the candles they lit in her name. But the water remembers more than grief. Subscribe to the vault and never walk alone again. The family hadn't gathered in 3 years, not since the funeral. The old lakeside house sat quiet beneath a washed-out autumn sky, its windows blind, its porch sagging, its paint peeled to the color of ash. It was supposed to feel like home, but nothing about it did anymore. The grandparents, Ellen and Charles, had been the first to arrive. They always were. Ellen brought flowers. Charles brought silence. He parked the car at the edge of the gravel path and sat there for a long time before shutting off the engine. Ellen whispered, she loved this place. Charles didn't answer. He just stared toward the dock, the same dock where they'd last seen her alive. By late afternoon, cars began to pull into the long, cracked driveway one by one. Brothers, sisters, cousins, the family that grief had quietly fractured. They'd planned this reunion as a way to heal, a way to talk about her without tears, but the lake seemed to swallow every good intention whole. Inside, the house felt frozen in time. The same photographs lined the walls, smiling faces from before it happened. The same ticking clock in the living room, its sound louder now, somehow heavier. Even the same faded drawings on the fridge, crayon suns and stick figures labeled Grandma and Me. They unpacked food, laughter, small talk, all of it sounding like a language they'd forgotten how to speak. Every word, every smile felt forced, like they were performing happiness for the dead. As night drew near, the lake began to change. The water, calm all afternoon, started to ripple, though no wind had come. The surface reflected the sky in dull streaks of orange and gray, and when the sun finally sank, the reflection didn't disappear. It just darkened like something moving beneath it. Dinner was quiet. They talked about work, about college, about the weather. No one mentioned her name, the little girl who had drowned while in their care. They said that day, or the accident, but never her name. When dessert came, Ellen stood to make a toast. Her hands shook as she lifted the glass. To family, she said, her voice brittle. To forgiveness, and to memory. Everyone raised their glasses. Outside, the lake was still. The night was black. And for the first time in 3 years, the back door, the one that led down to the water, creaked open by itself. No one mentioned the door. Ellen noticed first, but she told herself it was the wind. Charles got up quietly and shut it, twisting the old brass knob until it clicked. But the room felt colder after that, like the air itself had been replaced with something that didn't belong. They went back to their seats, to the soft clatter of forks and plates, to conversation that died halfway through each sentence. By 10 o'clock, most of them had drifted into the living room where the fireplace still worked, and someone tried to put on music, old songs from when the cousins were kids. It sounded cheerful, but the sound echoed oddly through the house, like it was playing in another room first, then here. The younger cousins sat cross-legged on the carpet, scrolling through their phones, while the adults spoke in low voices that circled the same unspoken thing. Outside, the lake was black glass. The moon hadn't come up yet, and the only light came from the house, long, distorted reflections trembling across the water. Then, someone laughed, soft, light, quick. It came from the direction of the dock. Charles froze mid-sentence. Ellen dropped her glass. The sound shattered against the stone hearth. Everyone looked at each other, silent, searching. It had been a child's laugh. The cousins hurried to the back door, pulling it open. Cold air rushed in. The dock was empty, the lake calm, but a faint ripple drifted outward as if something had just stepped off the last plank. Charles stepped outside, his shoes crunching on wet grass. At the edge of the dock, he stopped. A small plastic hair clip floated against the post, pink, shaped like a butterfly. the same kind she used to wear. When he picked it up, the water moved again, just once, like a breath. Inside, Ellen tried to clean the broken glass, her hands trembling. Her sister-in-law whispered, Maybe it's a sign. She's at peace." But Ellen didn't answer. She could still hear the laugh, soft, muffled, and close. Later that night, after most had gone to bed, Ellen walked down the hallway toward the guest room. The floor creaked beneath her feet, and the air smelled faintly of damp linen and lake water. Halfway down the hall, she stopped. Something wet glistened on the wood, a small bare footprint. Then another. They led from the bathroom to the stairs that went down toward the lake door. At the bottom, she saw the back door standing open again, curtains stirring in the cold. A shape moved outside, too small to be an adult, too slow to be a shadow. Ellen whispered her granddaughter's name before she realized she'd said it aloud, and the shape turned its head. It wasn't a trick of the light, it wasn't memory. There was a little girl standing halfway down the dock, hair dripping, dress clinging, face pale under the dark. And though Ellen's voice failed her, she saw the child lift her hand in a small, familiar wave. Then, in the space of a blink, the girl was gone. The dock was empty again, the ripples spreading outward in perfect circles. Ellen didn't scream. She just closed the door and locked it, her hands shaking as she whispered, "It's not her. It's not her." By midnight, the house had gone silent again, but no one was sleeping. Every door had been checked twice. The dock light, which hadn't worked in years, flickered faintly now, its yellow glow swaying over the lake like a heartbeat. Charles sat in the old armchair facing the window, the hair clip still in his hand. He didn't notice the wet prints on the floorboards behind him, small, uneven steps that stopped just a few feet away. He whispered, "We never meant for you to be alone." And something whispered back, not through air, through water. The sound came from the pipes, from the walls, from deep inside the floor. A voice, soft and wrong, echoing the words he'd just said, "Never meant alone." Ellen woke to the sound of dripping. She turned on the lamp, expecting to see condensation from the windows, but her nightstand was wet. The framed photo of her granddaughter, the one from her 7th birthday, had water running down the glass as if it were crying. When she touched the frame, the lamp flickered, the picture changed, just for an instant. Instead of a smiling child holding a cake, the photo showed the same girl, standing waist-deep in dark water, eyes open, lips blue. The image blinked back to normal, but Ellen dropped it. The sound drew Charles to the door, and when he stepped into the room, his socks soaked instantly. The carpet was wet, not from a spill, but from underneath. Something was seeping up through the floorboards, cold, thick, smelling faintly of algae and decay. They followed the wet trail down the hall, past the bedrooms where the rest of the family had begun to stir. By the time they reached the living room, every picture frame had begun to rattle against the walls. The youngest cousin screamed from the kitchen. She pointed toward the window. Outside, the lake wasn't reflecting the house anymore. It was reflecting faces, dozens of them, pale, faint, drifting just beneath the surface like pressed flowers under glass. And among them, the little girl, her hair floating around her like smoke. Charles stumbled back. "This isn't her," he said. "This isn't." But the girl's face moved closer to the surface, and the others faded away. Her eyes opened. The kitchen sink erupted with water, spraying upward, flooding the counter. The back door swung open so violently that it hit the wall. And there she was, standing in the doorway, dripping, barefoot, wearing the same pale dress from the day she died. Her skin was gray in the half-light, and her eyes were the color of the lake. Everyone froze. Ellen took one step forward. The girl tilted her head, her hair dripping across her face. Then she spoke, a whisper that sounded like water pulling through reeds. "You left me with her." The room went still. Ellen's hands covered her mouth. They all knew who her meant. The family friend who had been watching her that day. The one who'd insisted the girl was playing safely by the shore when she went inside to take a call. The friend, Martha, sat in the corner of the room now, pale, trembling. She whispered, "It was an accident." The little girl's head twitched, slow and unnatural. "Then why did you lock the door?" Martha screamed. The lights burst, one by one. Darkness swallowed the house. In the faint moonlight, the child's shape flickered, not moving, but there and not there. Her face sometimes clear, sometimes shifting with water. And as everyone stumbled backward, someone, no one could tell who, heard her laugh again. Not angry, not cruel, just lonely. Then the front windows exploded outward, and the lake water came rushing in. The sun rose gray over the lake. The house stood quiet, half drowned in morning mist. Windows shattered, floors soaked, furniture overturned like something had swept through. Not a storm, not an intruder, but something old and patient. No one spoke for a long time. The surviving family gathered outside on the driveway, wrapped in blankets, shoes and socks soaked through. No one could quite remember how they got there. Some swore they'd blacked out when the water hit the stairs. Others remembered clawing toward the door, feeling hands pulling them forward, not backward, small, cold hands. The authorities came hours later. They said the pipes must have burst, that the house was too close to the lake, that the foundation had weakened. They said what they always say when something impossible happens. But no one mentioned the girl they'd all seen standing in the doorway. Ellen sat on the back step as the sun tried to rise higher, staring at the dock. The boards gleamed with dew, or something that looked like it. Charles stood behind her, silent. The others stayed near the cars, whispering to one another about selling the house, about never coming back. When the paramedics finally left, Ellen walked down to the water. The air smelled clean again, almost sweet, as if the lake had taken what it wanted and left the rest untouched. At the end of the dock, she found something resting against one of the posts. A child's bracelet, pale plastic beads spelling her granddaughter's name. She lifted it with shaking fingers, clutching it to her chest, whispering, "I'm sorry." The wind moved gently across the water, and then, in the distance, a splash. Soft, small, deliberate. She turned toward it, her breath fogging in the morning air. The lake was still, but beneath its surface, she thought she saw movement. Faint, circular ripples forming a slow, steady pattern as though something below was pacing. She didn't say a word. She just watched as the ripples stopped, and a single bubble rose, breaking the surface with a sound that almost resembled a sigh. That night, Ellen and Charles left the house for good. By morning, the dock light had gone out again, and though the lake looked empty in the daylight, travelers who drove by after dark swore they could see it from the highway, a faint glow over the water, like someone holding a lantern at the end of the dock. Sometimes, they even said, it wasn't just a light. It was the shape of a small girl standing there, waiting. They moved out of the house and never returned. But sometimes, passing by on the highway at night, they see a light in the upstairs window. And that concludes tonight's story, the reunion by the lake. Some memories should never be revisited. Some doors, even when they lead home, were never meant to open again. They gathered to honor the dead, but the dead remembered everything. Listen in the dark. Watch with the lights off. And if you ever visit a lake that took someone you love, don't follow the reflection. It might not be yours. Subscribe to The Vault and never walk alone again. We upload daily. If you have a story of your own, add it to the comments. You never know. The next story could be yours. Until then, keep your lights low and your doors locked, because the water never forgets. See you on the next video.